When she caught her Mafia boss fiancé in bed with her maid of honor 4 hours before the wedding, he didn't even bother pulling on pants. He just looked at her in that lace gown and said, "Fix your face, Emery. The wedding's still on. You're mine." That was the precise second she decided the wedding was absolutely happening. Only the groom was about to change. The suite door opened with a whisper that cracked through the silence like a round sliding into the chamber. Emery Dean stood motionless on the threshold, veil trailing from her fingers, the morning light turning the intricate lace of her wedding dress into white fire. Edwin Chirasoli leaned against the bedpost, shirt unbuttoned, silver threading his dark hair, the lazy smirk of a man who had never been told no. Behind him, legs folded beneath her on the ruined sheets, sat Lila Moreau, maid of honor, best friend since college, wearing nothing but the diamond choker that was supposed to be Emery's something new. Empty champagne bottles glinted on the carpet like spent casings. Edwin's midnight tuxedo lay in a heap, kicked aside the way he discarded anything once he was finished with it. The air smelled of sex, expensive cologne, and absolute ownership. Edwin glanced at the watch she had gifted him last Christmas, the one that cost more than most people's houses. "You're early," he said, voice smooth as the silk sheets. "Go finish hair and makeup. 300 guests are waiting to see you become mine for good." Lila's soft laugh floated across the room, sharp as broken crystal. Something inside Emery should have shattered. Instead, a cold, perfect stillness settled over her. The same stillness she had practiced in secret for 8 months. She noticed everything with the precision of a sniper. The half-empty bottle of 1996 Dom Perignon. The lipstick smear on the rim that wasn't hers. The way Edwin's knuckles still carried faint yellow shadows from the lesson he had given her 7 nights ago when she dared to ask why. He came home at 4 in the morning smelling like someone else. Her mind filed it all away the way it had learned to file everything. Evidence. For years ago, when she was 24 and thought danger was sexy, Edwin Chirasoli had walked into an art gallery opening and decided she belonged to him. For years of chosen outfits and tracked phones. For years of friends who mysteriously stopped calling after they warned her. For years of bruises hidden under long sleeves and apologies that tasted like blood. For years of pretending the cage was a palace because the alternative was disappearing like the girls who came before her. Edwin stepped closer, close enough for her to smell Lila on his skin. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear with the same hand that had left fingerprints on her throat 2 weeks ago. "Nothing changes, baby," he murmured, thumb brushing her cheek in that possessive caress the cameras loved. "This was just stress relief. You're the one I'm marrying. You're the one wearing my ring. You're mine. Always have been. Always will be." He expected tears. He expected her to drop to her knees and beg forgiveness for interrupting. That was the script he had written for her life. Emery looked up at him through the veil and did something she had not done in 4 years. She smiled. "You're right," she said, voice soft, steady, almost tender. "Everything is perfect. The flowers, the orchestra, the $5 million you spent. I wouldn't dream of canceling." For the first time in years, confusion flickered across his face. Just a flash, gone as quickly as it came. She stepped back, out of his reach, and let the door handle slip from her fingers. The door closed with the softest click. Behind it, she heard Lila giggle again in Edwin's low, satisfied chuckle. "That's my good girl," he called through the wood. He thought she was obeying. In the empty hallway, Emery reached into the hidden pocket sewn inside the lining of her wedding dress and pulled out the burner phone. One contact. One word. Now, the reply came instantly. "Ronan Parks. Copy. All teams in position. See you at the altar, Mrs. Parks." Her pulse did not race. Her hands did not shake. 8 months of preparation had burned fear out of her like acid. She walked to the gilded mirror at the end of the corridor, lifted the veil, and stared at the woman looking back. Cheeks flushed from perfect makeup. Lips painted the exact shade Edwin had chosen. Eyes that belonged to a stranger no longer. No tears. No tremor. Just steel. She leaned close enough to fasten the glass that her breath fogged it. "Today," she whispered to the reflection that had spent 4 years learning how to lie, "I stopped being his Drop a like right now if you're already rooting for Emery to burn it all down. Subscribe because this wedding is about to become the most satisfying takedown you've ever seen. And comment, change the groom if you know Edwin is finished. The woman in the mirror 8 months ago was still a ghost wearing Emery's face. She sat at the long glass table in the private dining room of Edwin's coastal estate, hands folded in her lap exactly the way he liked, while designers and florists and photographers circled like sharks. The wedding binder in front of her was thicker than a phone book, and every page had already been approved by Edwin. Except today, he had decided the catering needed his personal touch. The door opened and Ronan Parks walked in alone. Black button-down rolled to the elbows. No clipboard. No assistant. Just quiet gray eyes that took an entire room in one sweep and settled on Emery for half a second longer than anyone else ever dared. Edwin lounged at the head of the table, feet propped on a chair that cost more than most cars. "So you're the famous chef," Edwin drawled, not bothering to stand. "My fiancée thinks she gets to pick the menu. Cute, right?" Ronan's expression never changed. "Miss Dean has excellent taste," he said, voice low, calm, almost gentle. "I brought samples based on the brief she sent." Edwin laughed, cold and sharp. He reached over and flipped the binder shut with one finger. "She doesn't send briefs. She asks me and I decide. Show me what you've got, chef, and make it quick." Emery felt heat crawl up her neck. She had spent 3 weeks researching seasonal truffles and sustainable seafood. She had dared to believe this one thing could still be hers. Ronan opened the leather case and began laying out small plates without comment. Miniature heirloom tomato tarts, Wagyu sliders with 24-karat gold dust, passion fruit spheres that burst into liquid sunset on the tongue. Edwin tasted nothing. He watched Emery instead. "Well," he asked her, mock sweet, "is this what you wasted my time on?" She opened her mouth to apologize, trained response rising automatically. Ronan spoke first. "Actually, sir, the gold dust sliders were Miss Dean's idea. She said the guests should feel like royalty. I thought it was brilliant." Silence crashed across the table. Edwin's smile vanished. "You thought it was brilliant?" he repeated, voice dangerously soft. "You don't think here. You cook." Ronan held his gaze for one heartbeat. 2. Something dark and furious flickered behind the gray, gone so fast Emery almost believed she imagined it. Then he inclined his head. "Of course. Whatever you decide." Edwin waved a dismissive hand. "Change it all. Meat. Red sauce. Boring. My family doesn't eat rabbit food." He stood, already done. "Emery will give you the new list. Don't waste my time again." He walked out without another word. The room emptied fast after that. No one wanted to be near the fallout. Emery kept her eyes on the table, cheeks burning, until the last footsteps faded. When she finally looked up, Ronan was still there, packing the rejected samples with careful hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. He didn't pretend not to understand. "Don't be," he said quietly. "None of this is your fault." Something in his tone made her throat tighten. He slid the last plate into the case, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple black business card. He placed it face down on the table in front of her, the way a dealer lays down an ace. Their fingers brushed for half a second. Later that night, alone in the marble bathroom with the door locked for the first time in months, Emery turned the card over. Ronan Parks, Executive Catering. And on the back, handwritten in ink so dark it looked wet, "If you ever want out, I can make it happen. No price. No questions. Just say when." Her pulse thundered so loud she was sure the hidden cameras would hear it. 3 nights later she found courage. She waited until Edwin passed out drunk after a late meeting, then slipped out of the bedroom in socks, heart hammering against her ribs. She took the service elevator to the kitchen, walked straight to the walk-in cooler, and pulled the heavy door open. Ronan was already inside, breath fogging the cold. He didn't waste time. "My real name is Ronan Parks. Special Agent, Joint Organized Crime Task Force. I've been hunting Edwin Chirasoli for 12 years. The words hit her like ice water and oxygen at the same time. He stepped closer, voice barely above the hum of compressor. I can get you out. You, your sister, your parents. New names. New country. Gone tomorrow. Emery wrapped her arms around herself to stop the shaking. And if I don't want to disappear? His eyes searched hers. Then we take him down together. But it's dangerous. Once you start, there's no halfway. She thought of her little sister's laugh, of the way Edwin looked at her, sometimes like she was already a ghost. I'm tired of disappearing, she said. I want him to be the one who vanishes. Ronan's shoulders lowered a fraction, something almost like relief. Then here's how it works. You keep living your life exactly the same. You smile. You plan the perfect wedding. And every time you're near something useful, you pass it to me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny velvet pouch. Inside was an engagement ring box. Inside, that was her current ring, returned after resizing, except now the center diamond had a hairline fracture no one would ever notice. Micro recorder, he explained. Voice activated. 30-day battery. I swap it out during fittings. She stared at the ring that had felt like a shackle for 2 years. Now it felt like a weapon. What do you need first? She asked. Whatever he leaves lying around. Ledgers. Phones. Shipping manifests. Anything with dates and names. She slipped the ring back on. It fit perfectly. Their breath mingled in the frozen air. I'll get you everything, she said. His fingers brushed hers again, deliberate this time. I'll keep you alive, he answered. Neither of them moved to leave. In the cold blue light, with frost curling around their ankles, something dangerous and new sparked between them. Not love yet, not trust. Something sharper. Hope with teeth. Smash like if you felt that spark in the freezer. Subscribe right now because these two are about to play the longest, hottest, most lethal game of pretend in history. Comment, walk-in cooler meeting. If you know this alliance just changed everything. The freezer door closed behind them with a heavy thunk, sealing that first promise in frost. 8 months began right there. Month 1. Emery learned how to smile while lying. She wore the ring like a loaded gun. Every dinner with Edwin's lieutenants, every toast, every yes, baby caught crystal clear on the hidden recorder. She started leaving her phone on silent in plain sight, so Edwin never noticed the second device photographing documents when he stepped out to take calls. Month 2, dead drops became routine. A lipstick tube swapped in the ladies' room. A folded napkin under a dessert plate. Once, an entire flash drive hidden inside a hollowed-out wedding cake sample that Ronan sliced open in the back of his van while she kept watch to the windshield, heart jackhammering. Month 3, late-night drives. Edwin thought she was at bridal fittings that ran long. Really, Ronan picked her up 3 blocks away in an unmarked black sedan and took her to empty warehouse lots where he taught her how to break a grip, how to drive an elbow into a throat, how to fall without crying out. Pain is information, he told her after she landed hard on the mats for the 10th time. Use it. She stared up at the stars through the broken roof and realized she hadn't felt this alive since college. Month 4, Edwin started noticing the shift. He commented on how calm she seemed, how she didn't flinch anymore when he raised his voice. He installed new cameras in the hallways. He had her car low-jacked a second time. He began choosing her jewelry himself, heavy gold that felt like handcuffs. Month 5, the paranoia turned cruel. He showed up unannounced at a cake tasting and dragged her out by the wrist hard enough to bruise. Ronan watched from the service corridor, fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white, but he stayed in persona. Barely. Month 6, the night everything almost ended. Edwin decided Emery's younger sister, Harper, was getting mouthy on social media. He sent 2 men to pick Harper up after her night class for a friendly chat. Emery found out only when Ronan's burner lit up at 2 a.m. Family secure. Do not react tomorrow. She walked into breakfast the next day with perfect lipstick and asked Edwin sweetly if Harper could be a junior bridesmaid after all. He smiled, told her of course. Baby, whatever she wanted. He never knew Harper and their parents were already 3 states away under federal protection, courtesy of the quiet caterer he still called Chef. Month 7. The lines began to blur. During a self-defense session, Ronan pinned her to the mat to show a choke escape. Neither of them moved for a long second. "You're getting dangerous," he whispered, breath warm against her ear. "So are you," she answered, and felt the shift like tectonic plates. Alliance started tasting like longing. Month 8, 3 weeks before the wedding. They met in the back of his van after a final venue walkthrough. Rain hammered the roof like gunfire. Emery handed over the master drive. 8 months of ledgers, recordings, shipping routes that could put Edwin away for 3 lifetimes. Ronan took it, then didn't let go of her hand. "I need to say this once," he said, voice rough. "When this is over, when you're free, if you want to disappear alone, I'll make it happen. New country, clean slate. You never have to see me again." The rain roared louder. Emery looked at the man who had seen every bruise, heard every terrified whisper, taught her how to fight instead of how to kneel. The man whose real smile she had only seen twice, both times when she landed a perfect strike. She leaned across the console and kissed him, not soft, not sweet. 8 months of fear and fire, and finally feeling seen poured into it. When they broke apart, forehead still touching, she said, "I'm not running anymore, and I'm not leaving you behind." His answer was a low, shaken exhale that sounded like surrender and victory at the same time. Outside, lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the wedding venue in the distance, all white marble and fairy lights, waiting for the day she would walk down the aisle. They both knew only one groom was making it to that altar. 3 weeks, Ronan whispered against her lips. "Then we end him." Emery closed her eyes and felt the last piece lock into place. Hit that like button if your heart just exploded in that van. Subscribe right now, because we're 1 chapter away from the wedding day chaos. 3 weeks bled into one morning. 11:07 a.m. The bridal suite smelled like roses and vengeance. Emery sat perfectly still while the makeup artist dusted highlighter across cheekbones that had not slept in 36 hours. Outside the window, delivery vans rolled in, florists in black polos, photographers with heavy bags, extra wait staff in crisp white shirts. Every single one of them carried federal credentials under uniforms. Her phone buzzed on the vanity. "Edwin." She put it on speaker so the room could hear performance. "Emery." His voice oozed satisfaction. "You'd better be in that dress already. If you're 1 minute late walking down that aisle, your sister learns what happens to little girls who post selfies with captions about freedom. Understand me?" Emery watched her own reflection smile. Sweet, empty, obedient. "Of course, baby," she said syrupy. "I can't wait to marry you." He laughed and hung up. He had no idea Harper was drinking hot chocolate in a safe house in Vermont, guarded by 2 U.S. Marshals who called her ma'am and let her choose the movies. 11:29 a.m. The door opened again. Lila swept in wearing the champagne silk bridesmaid dress, hair curled, lips painted victory red. "Well," she purred, circling Emery like a shark, "don't you look tragic? Trying to hold it together after this morning?" She leaned close to the mirror, pretending to fix an earring. He said, "You cried so pretty when you saw us." Almost made him feel bad. Almost. Emery turned slowly in the chair. The makeup artist suddenly found something urgent across the room. "Lila." Emery's voice was soft, almost kind. "Do you remember sophomore year when you told me you'd always have my back?" Lila smirked. "Things change." Emery stood. The lace train pulled around her feet like spilled milk. "They do," she agreed. "Enjoy the champagne today. It's the last time you'll ever be relevant." Lila's smile faltered for half a heartbeat. Then she laughed too loud and flounced out. 11:45 a.m. A waiter knocked, carrying a silver tray of mimosas for bridesmaids. Ronan. Black vest, white shirt, the tiny earpiece almost invisible. He set the tray down, eyes flicking to clock, then to her. Emery lifted the small white gift box tied with satin ribbon, the wedding favor every guest would receive later. Inside, instead of Jordan almonds, sat the master drive, 8 months of blood and secrets. She pressed it into his palm. Their fingers brushed. No one in the room noticed. "See you at 4, she whispered. His answer was the tiniest curve at the corner of his mouth. Wouldn't miss it, Mrs. Parks. 11:52 a.m. In the service corridor, Ronan slipped into the florist van. The operation lit up like a war room. Command, this is Alpha One. Package received. All teams sound off. North exit, 2 agents locked. South Garden, 3 marshals in place. String quartet for shooters with suppressed rifles and instrument cases. Photographers, 6 snipers on the roof. Priest is legit, but he's been briefed. He'll read whatever names we give him. Ronan's voice stayed ice calm. Remember, no movement until she reaches the halfway mark. That's the signal. We take Chura solely alive if possible. Everyone else is expendable only if they draw first. A chorus of quiet copy echoed back. 12:15 p.m. Emery stood alone in front of the full-length mirror while the bridesmaid squealed over photos downstairs. She smoothed the lace over the hidden pocket sewn inside the bodice. Inside it, a tiny ceramic blade no metal detector would ever catch. Just in case. Her phone buzzed again. Edwin. A photo this time. Harper's old bedroom back home. Torn apart, mattress sliced open. Caption. Insurance policy. Emery stared at the screen until it went black. Then she slipped the phone into the trash lined with floral arrangement, buried under 24 white roses. She lifted the veil over her face. The fabric trembled once, then settled. 1:30 p.m. The organist began warming up. 300 of the most dangerous people on the East Coast took their seats. Men who own judges. Women who order hits between sips of champagne. All of them here to watch Edwin Chirasoli lock down the one thing he can never fully control. 2:45 p.m. Final radio check. Alpha 1, all teams green. Clock is live. T-minus 75 minutes. Ronan's voice came low through every earpiece in the building, including the one hidden in the pearl earring Emery now wore. Copy that, she whispered to the empty room, lips barely moving. Let's get married. 3:58 p.m. The cathedral doors waited at the end of the long hallway. White rose petals already scattered like snow. Violins tuning. 300 murderers in designer suits rising to their feet. Emery took one final breath. The veil hid the fire in her eyes. Showtime. Smash like if your pulse is racing right now. 4 p.m. sharp. The cathedral doors swung open on silent hinges. 300 of the most dangerous people alive rose as one, a rustle of silk and Italian wool. The organ roared to life. Sunlight speared through stained glass and painted blood red roses across the marble floor. Emery stepped into the light alone. No father to give her away. No bridesmaids trailing behind. Just her, the dress, the veil, and 8 months of borrowed time coming due. Every eye locked on her. Phones lifted. Cameras flashed. Somewhere above, news choppers already thundered in circles like vultures who smelled the kill. She walked. 1 measured step. 2. 3. Edwin waited at the altar in midnight black. Silver hair perfect. Smirk already in place. He spread his arms slightly, the king ready to claim his queen. 20 feet. 15. 10. Halfway. Emery stopped. The organ note hung in the air and died. Silence crashed through the cathedral, so complete the creak of her lace train sounded like a gunshot. She turned, not toward Edwin, toward the third pew on the left. Ronan stood there in a tux identical to Edwin's, earpiece glinting, gray eyes burning straight through her veil. He stepped into the aisle. Gasps rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Edwin's smirk froze. What the hell is this? Emery walked again, not toward the altar, toward Ronan, every step deliberate. Every click of her heel a countdown. Edwin took 1 step down from the platform. Emery, get over here. Now! She didn't break stride. Ronan met her halfway. He extended his hand. She placed hers in it. 300 murderers watched in stunned silence as the quiet caterer led the bride straight past the groom. Edwin's face went from confusion to purple rage in 2 seconds flat. Security, get her. Nothing happened, because every security guard in the building was already federal. The cathedral doors slammed shut with metallic finality. Boats slid home. Waiters in white shirts flipped tables. Photographers dropped camera bags and drew suppressed weapons. Florists produced handcuffs from rose buckets. Ronan pulled Emery gently to the altar, turned her face to priest, and spoke loud enough for every microphone hidden in the flower arrangements to catch it. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join this woman and this man in lawful matrimony. Edwin lunged. 2 marshals in tuxedo jackets intercepted him before he made it 3 steps. He roared, fought, actually landed a punch that split one agent's lip. Ronan never looked away from Emery. The priest, pale but steady, opened the book to the page that had been bookmarked months ago. Do you, Ronan Parks, take this woman? I do, Ronan said, voice steady as steel. In sickness and in health. To protect and to honor. All the days of my life. Edwin thrashed in the agent's grip. You're dead. Both of you are dead. The priest turned to Emery. And do you, Emery Dean, take this man? She lifted her veil, looked Edwin dead in the eyes across 20 feet of marble. I do, she said, clear as a bell. Till death do us part. Edwin screamed her name like a curse. The priest didn't miss a beat. By the power vested in me by the state and federal government, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Ronan cupped her face with both hands and kissed her like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. Behind them, agents forced Edwin to his knees. Ronan broke the kiss only long enough to pull cuffs from his inside pocket. Real ones. Shiny federal steel. He walked the 3 steps to Edwin, knelt, and snapped the cuffs around wrists that had never worn anything but gold in their life. Edwin spat blood. You have no idea what you just started. Ronan leaned in close. Actually, I've been waiting 12 years to finish it. He stood, turned back to Emery, and offered his arm. The organ exploded into the wedding march like nothing had happened. Agents opened the cathedral doors. Live news choppers caught the money shot. The bride in white lace on the arm of the new groom, walking out while the old groom was dragged away, screaming her name, face purple, cuffs flashing in the sunlight. Emery didn't look back once. Smash like if you just screamed at your phone. Subscribe right now, because we're nowhere near done. Comment, I do, if that was the most satisfying wedding you've ever witnessed. The cathedral doors closed behind them, and the world detonated. 4:17 p.m., news choppers screamed overhead. Live feeds exploded across every screen in the country. Breaking, Mafia King Edwin Chirasoli arrested at his own wedding. Phones inside the cathedral were confiscated. Outside, the footage looped on repeat. The bride in white choosing the caterer, while federal agents dragged the groom away in handcuffs. 4:29 p.m., the first raid hit the waterfront warehouse. Armored trucks smashed gates. SWAT poured in. They tore open catering vans on live television, and bricks of products spilled out of hollowed ice, sculptures shaped like swans. Hashtags were born before the sun set. By 6 p.m., 12 simultaneous raids. Ports, restaurants, construction sites. Every front Edwin had ever used cracked wide open. Lieutenants started flipping faster than the cameras could keep up. One captain cried on camera when they showed him the wedding footage. He's done, he sobbed. We're all done. 8:12 p.m. Federal holding cell, Lower Manhattan. Edwin sat shirtless on a metal bench, cuffs still on, face swollen from the arrest. A guard slid a burner phone through the slot. Edwin made 3 calls. First call, burn every Ronan Parks property to the ground. Tonight. Second call, find the sister, bring her to me alive. I want Emery to watch. Third call, 1 million each. I want them both in the dirt by sunrise. Then he leaned back, smiled at the camera he knew was watching, and mouthed a single word. Mine. 10:47 p.m. First fire. Ronan's flagship kitchen in Brooklyn lit up like a torch. Flames lit the sky orange. Firefighters arrived to find gas lines mysteriously severed. 11:03 p.m. Second fire. The catering warehouse. By midnight, for locations were infernos. 11:19 p.m. Ronan's team intercepted the crew heading for Vermont. The safe house stayed dark and quiet. Harper never even woke up. 1:14 a.m. A black SUV collected Ronan and Emery from a private airstrip. No lights. No plates. They drove west until cities turned to trees, then pulled into a nondescript cabin surrounded by nothing but pine and silence. Inside, federal agents at every window, dogs on the porch, satellite uplink blinking red. Emery stepped over the threshold, still wearing the wedding dress, veil long gone, lace streaked with soot from a Brooklyn fire they had watched from a helicopter. Ronan locked the door behind them. For the first time in 8 months, no cameras, no lies, no pretending. Just them. He turned to her, eyes scanning for injuries. "You okay?" She looked at the ring on her left hand. Simple gold band he had slipped on during the chaos. Real this time. "I'm married," she said, voice cracking on the wonder of it. "To the wrong man for 4 years," he answered. "To the right one for 4 hours." She laughed once, raw and shocked. Then the tears came. Not pretty. Not quiet. 8 months of terror and adrenaline pouring out all at once. Ronan caught her before her knees gave out. He held her up like she weighed nothing, arms locked around her waist, her face buried in his neck. "I was so scared," she whispered against the skin. "Every second, every day." "I know." His voice broke. "I had to watch him touch you and do nothing. I'm sorry." She pulled back just enough to see his face. "You gave me a weapon when I had nothing. You never looked away." He brushed a thumb across her cheek, smearing soot and tears. "I looked away every time I wanted to kill him for breathing near you." The air between them changed. 8 months of stolen glances and careful distance finally snapped. She kissed him first. Hard. Desperate. Real. He kissed her back like a man who had been starving. They made it to the bedroom somehow. Dress buttons scattered. His vest hit the floor. No performance. No audience. Just skin and breath and the sound of two people finally, truly choosing each other. After, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled like pine and safety. Emery traced a scar on his shoulder. Old bullet wound from the night Edwin killed his first partner. "He's never going to stop," she whispered into the dark. Ronan pulled her closer. "He can burn the world down. He still lost you today. That's the one thing he can't buy back." Outside, snow started to fall, soft and silent, covering the tire tracks, the footprints, the last trace of the life she used to live. Inside, for the first time in 4 years, Emery fell asleep without fear. Drop it like if that safe house scene just wrecked you. 6 months later. February wind whipped the courthouse steps as Emery stepped out of the black SUV, Ronan 1 pace behind. No wedding dress today. Simple white coat, hair pulled back, the same steel in her spine that carried her down the aisle. Grand jury testimony day. The day the recordings went from secret files to public record. The day Edwin's last hope died. Cameras waited like wolves. Reporters shouted questions. Federal marshals formed a loose circle. Emery walked straight through them, chin high. She had practiced this moment in her head 1,000 times. Look him in the eye one last time and bury him. Ronan's hand brushed the small of her back, steady, protective. His voice came low through the earpiece, only she could hear. "Eyes up. Breathe. You've got this." They reached the top step. Everything happened in 4 seconds. A maintenance van screeched to a stop at the curb. Doors flew open. For men in ski masks poured out with automatic weapons already rising. Ronan's shout cut through the air. "Contact front." The world exploded. First burst shredded marble, where Emery's head had been a heartbeat earlier. Screams. People diving. Phones up, live streaming the apocalypse. Emery dropped and rolled exactly the way Ronan had drilled into her on cold warehouse floors. She came up inside the grip of the nearest gunman, elbow to solar plexus, knee to groin, ceramic blade from her sleeve already slicing the strap of his rifle. The man grunted, stumbled. Ronan was already moving, 2 marshals down, returning fire in controlled bursts. He saw the second shooter swing toward Emery. Time slowed. Ronan sprinted, threw himself between her and the muzzle flash. The bullet took him high in the chest, spun him, slammed him to the concrete. Emery screamed his name. Pure muscle memory took over. She stripped the rifle from the fallen gunman, flipped the safety Ronan had made her practice blindfolded, and put 2 rounds center mass into the shooter who had just fired. The remaining 2 attackers tried to drag her toward the van. She fought like a woman who had nothing left to lose. Knee to the throat of one, blade across the Achilles of the other. Federal snipers on the roof finally found their angles. Both attackers dropped before they reached the street. Silence fell, broken only by distant sirens and the click of hundreds of phone cameras. Emery crawled through blood and snow to Ronan. He was conscious, hand pressed to the wound, red seeping between his fingers. "Hey!" He managed a weak grin. "Told you pain is information." "Shut up," she sobbed, pressing both hands over his. "You're not dying on these steps." Marshals swarmed. Medics shouted. Someone threw a blanket over her shoulders. Ronan's eyes found hers through the chaos. "Finish it," he rasped. "Testify. End him." They lifted him onto a stretcher. Emery stood, coat soaked in his blood, and walked the rest of the way into the courthouse on legs that would not let her fall. 2 hours later, she took the stand covered in her husband's blood and played every recording clear, cold, and merciless. By nightfall, the footage was everywhere. The bride who fought back. The groom who took a bullet for her. The Mafia princess who ended an empire on courthouse marble. Edwin watched the live feed from his cell. When the clip looped for the 10th time, he put his fist through the television screen. Game over. For months after the courthouse steps ran red, the trial began. Edwin Chirasoli sat in federal court in an orange jumpsuit that cost less than the socks used to. No tailored suit. No diamond watch. Just cuffs and the knowledge that every camera in the country was watching him fall. Day 12. They called Emery Parks to the stand. She walked in wearing simple white, hair down, no jewelry except the thin gold band Ronan had placed on her finger the day everything changed. The scar on Ronan's chest was still healing, but he sat in the front row behind her, eyes locked on her back like a shield. Emery took the oath without blinking. The prosecutor slid the first recorder across the table. "Mrs. Parks, please tell the jury what they're about to hear." She pressed play. Edwin's voice filled the courtroom, cold, amused, recorded the night he thought she was asleep. Once the ring's on her finger, she'll learn. They all do, or they disappear. Another clip. Harper's getting mouthy. Maybe a short vacation will fix that attitude. Another. Burn the caterer's places down. Send a message. The jury went pale. Edwin stared straight ahead, jaw muscle twitching. The only sign the king was cracking. Emery never raised her voice. She played every file, date stamped, crystal clear. 8 months of nightmares turned into evidence. When the last recording ended, the silence was suffocating. The prosecutor asked one question. "Did you ever at any point want to be his?" Emery looked directly at Edwin for the first time. "No," she said. "I wanted to be free." Cross-examination lasted 7 minutes. Edwin's lawyer tried to paint her as a gold digger, a liar, a scorned woman. She answered every question the same way. Calm, factual, deadly. Closing arguments were barely needed. The jury filed out at 2:14 p.m. They filed back in at 2:33 p.m. 19 minutes. We, the jury, find defendant Edwin Chirasoli guilty on all counts. Racketeering, murder conspiracy, attempted murder of a federal officer, life imprisonment, no possibility of parole. The gavel fell like a gunshot. Edwin didn't move, didn't react, just stared at the table, as if the words hadn't reached him yet. Then the marshals hauled him up. Emery asked for 5 minutes in the holding area. They gave it to her. Thick glass separated them. Phones on both sides. Edwin picked us up with cuffed hands. Face slack, eyes bloodshot, the monster reduced to a man who had lost everything. "You won," he said, voice hoarse. Happy now. Emery looked at him the way she once looked at a nightmare she no longer feared. "You still don't get it," she said quietly. This was never about winning. He leaned closer to the glass. "You were mine. For years. You'll never wash me off. She smiled small, final, free. You were never my owner, Edwin. You were my evidence. She hung up the phone, turned her back, walked out without waiting for a scream. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions she ignored. Ronan waited at the bottom of the steps, scar visible under his open collar, arms still in a sling, grinning like the world had just been reborn. She ran the last 3 steps and crashed into him. He caught her with one arm and held on like he'd never let go again. Overhead, the sky opened up and snow began to fall, soft and clean, covering the city in quiet white. Edwin Chirasoli was gone forever, and Emery Parks was finally completely free 2 years later. The grand ballroom glittered under 1,000 fairy lights. Women in gowns that once had bruises now wore them like medals. Survivors, fighters, founders, every single one of them free, because one woman decided her story would not end in a cage. Emery Parks stood at the podium in midnight blue silk, the exact color of the sky the night she chose a different groom. Ladies, she began, voice steady, warm, alive. 2 years ago, I walked down an aisle in a dress I didn't choose, toward a future I never wanted. Tonight, we celebrate every woman who refused to stay in that dress. The room erupted. Ronan stood just off stage, no longer in catering black, no longer hiding. Just a man in a perfectly fitted tux, watching his wife own the room the way she now owned her life. When she finished, the applause thundered so loud the chandeliers shook. Later, backstage, he met her with champagne and the grin that still made her knees weak. You were incredible, he said. We were, she corrected, and kissed him in front of everyone who mattered. The Dean Freedom Initiative had opened 12 safe houses in 18 months. Legal funds, therapy dogs, self-defense classes taught by the woman, who once learned them on cold warehouse floors at 3 a.m. Every ribbon cutting, every new location, every time a woman walked out with a new name and a future, Emery was there. Quiet moments became sacred. Mornings in their brownstone with the skylight that poured sunlight across the kitchen island. Ronan in sweatpants flipping pancakes, while Emery sat cross-legged on the counter in one of his old shirts, sketching floor plans for the house they were finally building outside the city. No guards at the door, no burner phones, no cameras in the hallway, just coffee and burnt toast and laughter that echoed off bare walls they were slowly filling with art she chose herself. One Sunday in early spring, golden light spilled across the drafting table. Emery hunched over blueprints, pencil between her teeth, hair twisted up with a paintbrush. Ronan slid a plate of pancakes beside her, extra blueberries, her favorite. She looked up, flower on her cheek, eyes bright. It has a library with a secret door, she said, excited as a kid, and a kitchen big enough for 20 people who never have to be afraid again. He leaned down, kissed the flower off her cheek. Build whatever you want, Mrs. Parks. I'm just here to carry the heavy stuff and love you, stupid. She laughed, the soundlight, free, hers. Later, when the pancakes were gone and the blueprints were covered in syrup fingerprints, she stood at the window, watching cherry blossoms drift past the glass. Ronan wrapped arms around her from behind, chin on her shoulder. Happy? He asked quietly. She turned in his arms, looked at the life they had built from fire and evidence and one impossible yes on an altar. Terrified every day that I'll wake up and it will be gone, she admitted, and happier than I ever thought I was allowed to be. He kissed her slow, soft, like a promise renewed every morning. On screen, white text faded in over the image of them standing in the sunlight. City quiet behind them. She didn't just escape the monster. She became the safe place other women run to. Emery Parks closed the blueprints, set the pencil down, and smiled at the man who taught her that freedom was not the absence of fear, but the presence of choice. For the first time in her life, Emery Dean belonged only to herself, and she was finally, completely, unapologetically home. This is the end. Beautiful people. Drop a like if Emery Parks just became your new hero. Subscribe because we're cooking up brand new stories. Thank you for riding this revenge wedding with us. See you in the next one. Stay free.